And so we wanted to start by asking you a little bit about personal revelation. President Nelson has taught us about the importance of personal revelation recently, and we wanted to ask you what you might add to that, what you would teach us about what you've learned as an apostle and in your personal experience about receiving personal revelation.
I think the first thought that comes to my mind is that we often make it hard on ourselves to receive personal revelation. By that I mean the covenant promise is that as we honor our covenants, we may always have the Holy Ghost to be our constant companion. But we talk about it and we treat it as if hearing the voice of the Lord through His Spirit is the rare event. And that just strikes me as a little curious. It's like I have to follow these 4 steps. Everywhere we get checklists, we get formulas. Do these 4 things and the Holy Ghost is going to speak to you and you're going to hear it. And I go, wait a minute. We shouldn't be trying to recognize it when it comes. We should be recognizing what happens that causes it to leave. It ought to be with us all of the time, not every nanosecond. But if a person is doing his or her best, you don't have to be perfect, but if you and I are doing our best and we're not committing serious transgression, then we can count on the Holy Ghost guiding us. So I think we sometimes start from a disadvantage in believing I have to gear up to recognize it when it ought to be there all the time. Secondly, I think in the culture of the church, especially in the Western world, we seem to believe that the Holy Ghost is dramatic and big and sudden when it's still and small and incremental over time. And that you don't have to recognize that you are receiving revelation in the moment that you are receiving revelation. And so because we think it's got to be big and I have to know it, we have all of these things that I think are just exactly the opposite of what really happens as we receive revelation. I think Nephi is the perfect example of this model. He went not knowing beforehand the things that he should do. And what is striking to me about that experience is that he's writing this after it happens. So he has to look back and reflect on his experience. And I don't mean to use casual language, but in the vernacular of today, I think he's saying, I was absolutely clueless how this was going to work. But he goes. And as he's going, he's being guided, but I'm not sure he knows that in every instant that he is pressing forward and going. Now, the reason that's at the very beginning of the Book of Mormon is so every one of us will read it 48 million times in our lives. It's before the Isaiah chapters. I think that may be intentional. So you get there and you get stuck and you go back and you read that over and over and over and over. But we never make the connection that what happened to him is probably how it ought to be working for us. I find members of the church who are terrified, I'm going to make a mistake. Did Nephi make a mistake the first time when they drew lots? Didn't work out. But boy, did he learn a lesson, and his family. Didn't work out when they tried the gold and all their possessions, but they learned a lesson. So it doesn't have to be big, dramatic, quick, all at once, and it works every time. It's just probably the opposite of that. But somehow we've come to the conclusion, I think those assumptions get in our way.